I stand in my empty office at midnight, packing the last of my belongings after being publicly humiliated and fired by CEO Richard Thornton earlier today. My hands shake slightly as I hold a flash drive containing client contracts worth $50 million. His words echo in my mind. Sit down and listen. Ungrateful. But what he doesn't know is that every major client signed personally with me, not the company. They trust Alita Morrison, not Thornton Marketing Solutions. I slip the drive into my purse, turn off the lights, and whisper to the darkness, "You have no idea what you just lost." 6 months earlier, I walked into Thornton Marketing Solutions every morning with genuine excitement. At 32, I had built something remarkable as senior account executive. The downtown Chicago office buzzed with energy, and I felt proud knowing I had personally recruited our 5 biggest clients: Henderson Industries, Blackstone Corp., Aurora Tech, Meridian Holdings, and Pacific Ventures. Each relationship took years to cultivate, built on trust, innovation, and results that consistently exceeded expectations. My digital marketing strategies weren't just successful, they were transformative. Henderson Industries saw their revenue increase by 43% after implementing my multi-platform approach. Aurora Tech's founder, Maria Santos, credited my campaign with doubling their market share. These weren't just business transactions. They were partnerships based on genuine connection and mutual respect. Richard Thornton, our CEO, had inherited the company from his father, but lacked any real marketing experience. He meant well enough, though his understanding of client relationships remained superficial. His college friend, Patricia Walsh, served as CFO, constantly focused on cutting costs rather than nurturing the relationships that drove our success. Then there was Marcus Sterling, VP of Sales, whose ambition burned so bright you could feel it across the room. He watched my client interactions with hungry eyes, always angling for a larger role. Jenny Rodriguez, my mentee and junior account manager, brought fresh ideas and boundless enthusiasm to our team. She reminded me why I loved this work: the creativity, the problem-solving, the satisfaction of helping businesses grow. Tom Bradley, our creative director, had been with the company for 12 years and understood the delicate balance between innovation and proven strategy. His graying temples and calm demeanor made him the office elder statesman. Everything changed when I landed the Quantum Industries contract, $15 million over 3 years, the biggest deal in company history. David Chen, their CEO, specifically sought me out after hearing about my work with Aurora Tech. We spent months developing a comprehensive strategy that would revolutionize their customer engagement approach. The signing ceremony was scheduled for the following week, and Richard couldn't contain his excitement. He featured the win prominently in our company newsletter, though he privately acknowledged my role in securing the deal. During our one-on-one meeting, he promised me a promotion to VP level and an equity stake in the company. Everything I had worked for seemed within reach. My personal stakes couldn't be higher. My younger brother Jake was starting his sophomore year at Northwestern University, and I had been covering half his tuition costs with my expected bonus from major deals like Quantum. My mother's battle with lupus required expensive medication that insurance only partially covered, and my salary allowed me to ensure she received the best care possible. This promotion wasn't just about career advancement. It represented financial security for my entire family. But success breeds suspicion, and I began noticing subtle changes in office dynamics. Marcus started making comments about whether I might be planning to leave and start my own agency. He would drop these suggestions during team meetings, always framed as concern rather than accusation. Patricia began questioning whether any one person should have such close relationships with our major clients, suggesting we needed backup plans for all accounts. The shift became undeniable during late-night strategy sessions. Richard started asking pointed questions about my loyalty to the company, wondering aloud if I might be tempted by outside offers. When I assured him of my commitment, he would nod, but something in his expression suggested doubt had already taken root. The climactic moment came during a strategy session that ran past 10 p.m. I had excused myself to get coffee when I heard Richard and Patricia's voices through the partially closed conference room door. Their words made my blood run cold. They were discussing a plan to gradually transfer my client relationships to Marcus and then restructure my position. They had been monitoring my email communications and planning this move for weeks. My promised promotion was never real. It was bait to keep me compliant while they prepared to eliminate me. Standing in that hallway coffee cup, trembling in my hands, I realized that 4 years of dedicated work had been reduced to a liability in their minds. My success had become my vulnerability. The manipulation campaign began subtly. Marcus started scheduling client meetings without including me on the invitations, claiming he was simply trying to support my heavy workload. When I pointed out these oversights, he would apologize profusely while suggesting that perhaps I was feeling overwhelmed. His concern felt genuine enough that other colleagues began wondering if I was struggling to manage my responsibilities. Patricia implemented new communication protocols, requiring all client correspondence to be copied to management. She framed this as a compliance measure, ensuring we maintained proper documentation for all business relationships. But the real purpose became clear when I noticed that my emails were being scrutinized far more closely than anyone else's. Every friendly comment or personal reference in my client communications was questioned as potentially unprofessional. Richard began inserting himself into client relationships that had been exclusively mine for years. He would appear unexpectedly at client lunches, positioning himself as the strategic visionary behind my tactical implementation. During these meetings, he would subtly redirect credit for successful campaigns, suggesting that my role was primarily executional, while the real innovation came from leadership-level thinking. The isolation strategy worked with devastating efficiency. Tom Bradley pulled me aside one Tuesday morning, his weathered face creased with concern. He warned me that something felt fundamentally wrong in the executive meetings, though he couldn't pinpoint exactly what was being discussed behind closed doors. Jenny noticed that my access to certain client databases had been quietly restricted, limiting my ability to pull historical performance data that I had previously used to demonstrate ROI to clients. Other employees began acting strangely around me. Conversations would stop when I entered common areas. Colleagues who had previously sought my advice on challenging accounts now seemed reluctant to engage in detailed discussions. I later learned they had been told confidentially that I might be leaving soon, so there was no point in developing dependencies on my expertise. The damage to client relationships became increasingly apparent. Marcus botched a crucial presentation to Aurora Tech, fundamentally misunderstanding their target demographic and proposing strategies that would have alienated their core customers. Maria Santos called me directly afterward, expressing frustration with the disconnect between our proven approach and this new direction. When I salvaged the situation with an emergency strategy revision, Richard sent a company-wide email crediting Marcus with collaborative problem-solving and adaptive thinking. Henderson Industries proved even more problematic for the emerging power structure. Robert Henderson, their CEO, had specifically requested that all future communications go through me exclusively. He trusted my judgment implicitly and valued the personal attention I gave to understanding his company's unique challenges. When Richard insisted that Marcus must be included in all future meetings, Henderson's assistant called to ask why they were being assigned a new account manager. The awkwardness of explaining that Marcus wasn't replacing me, just supporting me, highlighted how artificial this arrangement had become. My financial anxiety intensified as these changes unfolded. Jake's tuition bill for the spring semester would arrive soon, and I had counted on my year-end bonus to cover the payment. My mother's latest lupus flare-up required an adjustment to her medication regimen, increasing our monthly costs by nearly $800. Every sign that my position was being undermined threatened not just my career but my family's stability. The documentation strategy began almost by instinct. Jenny had quietly mentioned that Patricia had been asking unusual questions about my personal relationships with clients, wondering whether these connections might represent conflicts of interest. The suggestion that my professional success was somehow inappropriate struck me as both insulting and suspicious. I started using a recording app on my phone during all meetings, sensing that I would eventually need evidence of what was really happening. What I discovered exceeded my worst fears. Richard had been conducting secret negotiations with Pinnacle Marketing, a larger firm that specialized in corporate acquisitions. The potential merger would eliminate my position entirely while transferring all my client relationships to their existing account management structure. Marcus would be retained as the primary liaison for major accounts under the new company structure, essentially inheriting everything I had built. The most devastating revelation came through documents I found in the shared server. They planned to use my client relationships as leverage in the merger negotiations, demonstrating the value they could bring to Pinnacle. Once the contracts were formally transferred and the merger completed, they would eliminate my role as redundant. I was being used as bait to attract a buyer, then discarded once the transaction was complete. The betrayal cut deeper than professional disappointment. These people had sat across from me at countless team dinners, had celebrated my successes, had positioned themselves as mentors and collaborators. Richard had looked me in the eye while promising a promotion he never intended to deliver. Patricia had smiled sympathetically while implementing policies designed to undermine my authority. Marcus had pretended friendship while actively working to steal everything I had built. Standing in the empty office that Friday evening, reviewing the evidence of their deception, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt and confusion began transforming into something harder and more focused. They had made a critical error in their calculations. They assumed my client relationships belonged to the company rather than to me personally. They were about to learn the difference. The boardroom felt different that Tuesday morning. Quantum Industries executives had flown in from Seattle specifically for this presentation, and the energy should have been celebratory. I had spent weeks refining every detail of the proposal, crafting a comprehensive strategy that would revolutionize their customer engagement approach and drive unprecedented growth. David Chen sat at the head of the conference table, flanked by his VP of Marketing and Chief Technology Officer, all eager to see how we would bring their vision to life. I wore my best navy blue suit, purchased specifically for this moment, with money I had saved from cutting back on groceries and entertainment. The fabric felt crisp and confident against my skin, and I had practiced the presentation dozens of times until every transition felt natural and compelling. This was supposed to be my triumph, the culmination of months of relationship building and strategic planning. Richard entered the room with an energy that immediately felt wrong. Instead of the collaborative partnership we had discussed, he carried himself with the air of someone preparing for confrontation. Patricia followed closely behind her laptop bag, seeming heavier than usual, as if she were carrying extra materials for an unexpected agenda. Marcus took his seat across from me, and for the first time I noticed he wasn't looking at the quantum executives. He was watching me with anticipation. Unknown to me, they had orchestrated this moment with military precision. Richard had prepared his own presentation overnight, one that repositioned him as the primary strategic architect, while reducing me to a mere implementer of his vision. Marcus had been briefed on specific moments to interrupt my flow, creating openings for Richard to redirect the conversation. Patricia had prepared what she would later call a surprise announcement about organizational restructuring. I began my presentation confidently walking the quantum team through our research phase and strategic recommendations. The initial response was exactly what I had hoped for: engaged questions, approving nods, and the kind of technical discussions that indicated genuine interest. David Chen leaned forward as I explained how our multi-platform approach would integrate with their existing systems, and his CTO took detailed notes about implementation timelines. Then Richard stood up. "Sit down and listen," he said, his voice cutting through my explanation of ROI projections like a blade. The quantum executives shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, clearly not expecting this interruption. "There's been a change in our strategic direction, and I need to address some outdated approaches that are being presented here." My mouth went dry. The presentation remote felt suddenly heavy in my hand as I realized this wasn't a collaborative redirection. This was an ambush. Richard launched into his own version of the strategy, one that took credit for every innovative element I had developed while dismissing my research as preliminary groundwork. He spoke with the confidence of someone who believed his own revisionist history, genuinely convinced that leadership vision was more valuable than execution expertise. When I attempted to clarify several technical points that he had misrepresented, Richard's expression hardened. "Alida, you're being ungrateful and disrespectful to our partnership here. This kind of insubordination reflects exactly the attitude problems we've been discussing at the leadership level." His words carried the weight of predetermined judgment, as if my reaction was simply confirming suspicions he had already shared with others. The quantum executives exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their discomfort with this dynamic. David Chen cleared his throat softly, a sound that might have been an attempt to redirect the conversation back to business matters. But Richard was far from finished. "I'm afraid we're going to have to make some immediate changes to our account management structure," he announced, his voice carrying an authority that seemed to surprise even him. "Effective immediately, Alita Morrison is no longer employed by Thornton Marketing Solutions due to her inability to collaborate effectively and her insubordinate attitude toward company leadership." The silence that followed felt dense enough to touch. Patricia opened her laptop and began typing, as if documenting this termination had always been part of the morning's agenda. Marcus sat perfectly still, his expression carefully neutral, though I caught a brief flash of satisfaction before he regained control. The other managers around the table, colleagues who had worked alongside me for years, stared at their hands or their notepads, unable to meet my eyes. Security guards appeared in the doorway, their presence indicating that this termination had been planned with theatrical precision. Richard had arranged for them to wait outside, ready to escort me from the building, as if I posed some kind of threat to company security. The implication was clear: I was being treated like a thief who might steal company property or disrupt business operations. The walk from the boardroom to my office felt like a march through enemy territory. Colleagues who had trusted my judgment and sought my advice watched helplessly as I was escorted past their cubicles. Jenny started to stand, her face flushed with indignation, but Tom Bradley caught her arm and shook his head slightly. The message was clear: anyone who protested would likely face similar treatment. In my office, the security guards waited while I packed my personal belongings into a cardboard box. Family photos, my coffee mug from Northwestern University, a small plant that Jenny had given me for my birthday. The accumulated tokens of 4 years reduced to items that could fit in a single container. My computer access had already been revoked, and IT personnel arrived to collect my laptop and company phone. Throughout this process, I maintained my dignity through sheer force of will. When Richard appeared in my doorway to oversee the final moments of my departure, I looked him directly in the eyes and said, "Thank you for this opportunity, Richard. I hope everything works out exactly as you've planned." The words tasted bitter, but I delivered them with genuine composure. As I was led through the office for the final time, my phone buzzed with a text message from Jenny. She had managed to photograph a document left carelessly on Patricia's desk. "Confidential, post-merger staff eliminations." My name appeared at the top of a list that included Tom, Jenny, and 6 other long-term employees who had demonstrated loyalty to the company rather than to Richard's emerging regime. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This had never been about my performance or attitude. This was about clearing house for the Pinnacle merger, eliminating anyone who might represent resistance to the new organizational structure. I wasn't being fired for insubordination. I was being eliminated because my relationships with clients made me a threat to their transition plans. But even as the security guards escorted me to the parking garage, even as I sat in my car trying to process what had just happened, I felt something unexpected stirring beneath the humiliation and shock. They had made a fundamental miscalculation about who owned those client relationships. Richard could fire Alita Morrison, but he couldn't transfer the trust and respect I had built over years of dedicated service. The quantum industry's executives were still in that boardroom, and I wondered what questions they were asking about a company that would terminate its lead account manager in the middle of a crucial presentation. Richard's confident smile might have convinced him that he had solved a personnel problem, but I suspected it would vanish very quickly when he realized what he had actually accomplished. Sitting in my Honda Civic in the parking garage beneath the Thornton Marketing Building, I forced myself to think strategically rather than emotionally. The humiliation burned in my chest, but beneath the immediate pain, I sensed opportunity emerging from the wreckage of my career. Richard had just handed me something he didn't understand: complete freedom to pursue the relationships I had built without corporate constraints. My first call was to Sarah Chen, an employment attorney whose name I had gotten from a Northwestern University alumni network. Sarah's downtown office felt appropriately serious, with law books lining the walls and diplomas that spoke to decades of experience protecting workers from corporate misconduct. As I played the recordings I had made of Richard and Patricia's merger discussions, Sarah's eyebrows rose steadily higher. "They've documented their own misconduct beautifully," she said, reviewing the timeline of events leading to my termination. "Wrongful termination, breach of implied contract regarding your promotion, and potentially tortious interference with business relationships. But honestly, Alita, I think you have something much more powerful than a lawsuit." She pulled out my employment contract, pointing to a clause I had forgotten about. "Look at Section 12. Employee retains the right to maintain professional relationships with clients who specifically request continued services following termination of employment. Your clients didn't sign with Thornton Marketing Solutions. They signed because they trusted you personally." The legal validation was reassuring, but the strategic implications were revolutionary. I had spent 4 years building genuine partnerships with business leaders who valued my expertise and trusted my judgment. Those relationships belonged to me, not to Richard or his struggling company. My first client outreach call went to Robert Henderson, CEO of Henderson Industries. Robert had become more than a client over our 3 years working together. He was a mentor who appreciated my systematic approach to market analysis and campaign development. When I explained what had happened at Thornton Marketing, his response was immediate and decisive. "That's the stupidest business decision I've heard all year," Robert said, his gravelly voice carrying the authority of someone who had built a manufacturing empire from scratch. "Richard just torpedoed his own company. Alita Henderson Industries works with you, not with some corporate entity. If you're starting your own agency, I want to be your first official client." Aurora Tech's founder, Maria Santos, was equally direct when I reached her that evening. "I've been wondering how to tell you that the new guy Marcus fundamentally misunderstands our target market," she said. "Honestly, Alita, this might be the best thing that could have happened. You were always too talented to be stuck in someone else's company structure." Each conversation revealed the same pattern. These business leaders had partnered with me personally, not with Thornton Marketing Solutions. They valued my strategic thinking, my attention to detail, and my genuine investment in their success. Richard had fired the one person who actually maintained these crucial relationships, assuming he could transfer trust and respect through corporate paperwork. Pacific Ventures required a more delicate approach. Their VP of Marketing, James Walsh, had been dealing with budget pressures and might be hesitant to make rapid changes. But when I called him, James surprised me with his enthusiasm. "To be perfectly honest, Alita, I've been frustrated with the communication gaps since that Marcus guy started getting involved in our account. If you're going independent, I'd love to discuss exclusive representation." Tom Bradley reached out to me within 24 hours of my termination, suggesting we meet at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. His 12 years at Thornton Marketing had given him insight into patterns that newer employees couldn't see, and he was deeply disturbed by what had unfolded in that boardroom. "Richard's father built this company on relationships and integrity," Tom said, stirring his espresso with controlled anger. "What happened to you would have horrified William Thornton. I've been thinking about leaving anyway, and after watching them humiliate you like that, I can't pretend this is the same company anymore." Tom's offer to provide intelligence about internal operations was invaluable. He revealed that the Quantum Industries presentation had gone disastrously after my departure. David Chen and his team had asked pointed questions about company stability and management philosophy. When Richard couldn't adequately explain their strategic vision or implementation timeline, the Quantum executives had requested time for internal discussions before proceeding with any agreements. Jenny Rodriguez proved even more valuable as an ally. Her position as junior account manager gave her access to client communication records and internal scheduling systems. Through carefully worded text messages, she kept me informed about the growing panic within Thornton Marketing as clients began asking uncomfortable questions about account management changes. The business plan came together with surprising speed. My brother Jake, despite being only 19, had absorbed enough business strategy from his Northwestern coursework to help me structure a viable company. We spent an entire weekend in my apartment calculating startup costs and revenue projections based on confirmed client interest. My mother, despite her ongoing health challenges, insisted on contributing to the planning process. Her experience managing household finances with limited resources gave her insights into cash flow management that proved invaluable. "Honey, "You've been supporting other people's dreams long enough," she said, while reviewing our preliminary budgets. "It's time to build something that belongs to you." The numbers were encouraging. With just Henderson Industries, Aurora Tech, and Pacific Ventures, the new agency would generate enough revenue to cover basic operational costs and provide competitive salaries for a small team. Add Quantum Industries. If I could recover that relationship, plus 2 additional prospects that had expressed interest, and we were looking at a first-year revenue projection that exceeded my former salary by over 40%. But the most significant development came through an unexpected channel. David Chen from Quantum Industries called me directly on my personal phone, having gotten the number from Maria Santos. His message was brief but transformative. "Alita, we need to talk. What happened in that meeting yesterday doesn't align with the company we thought we were partnering with. Are you available for an independent consultation?" During our coffee meeting the following morning, David revealed information that changed everything. "Richard had been misrepresenting the scope of our discussions for weeks," he explained. "We never agreed to the proposal he presented yesterday. Honestly, we only wanted to work with Thornton Marketing because of your reputation. When Maria Santos mentioned you were going independent, I immediately saw an opportunity for a more direct partnership." David's next words made my pulse quicken. "I know 4 other CEOs who have been asking about your availability. There's a group of us who meet monthly to discuss marketing strategies, and your name comes up regularly as someone we'd like to work with directly." As I drove home from that meeting, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: complete control over my own destiny. Richard thought he had eliminated a problem employee, but he had actually freed his most valuable asset to compete directly against him. The humiliation in that boardroom was beginning to feel like liberation. The foundation for Sterling Solutions marketing was solidifying, rapidly built not on corporate hierarchy or inherited relationships, but on genuine partnerships and proven results. Richard's confident smile was about to disappear permanently. Sterling Solutions. Marketing became official on a crisp Thursday morning in October. I had chosen the name deliberately, using Marcus's first name as a subtle reminder that success belongs to those who earn it, rather than those who scheme for it. Within 72 hours of filing the incorporation paperwork, I had secured a temporary office space in River North Basic Equipment, purchased with my savings, and my first official contract. Robert Henderson's commitment exceeded even my optimistic projections. Henderson Industries signed a 2-year exclusive marketing agreement worth $8 million, with performance bonuses that could push the total value beyond $10 million. Robert insisted on paying the first quarter in advance, providing immediate capital for equipment and staff hiring. "I've been in business for 35 years, Robert told me as we signed the contract in his corner office overlooking Lake Michigan. "The best investments I've made have always been in people who prove their worth through results rather than politics. You've earned this opportunity, Alita." Aurora Tech followed within 48 hours. Maria Santos drove to my temporary office personally, bringing a $12 million contract and a bottle of champagne to celebrate what she called the smartest business decision I've made this year. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and her confidence in my abilities reminded me why I had chosen marketing as a career in the first place. "You know what I love about this partnership," Maria said, as we reviewed the campaign timeline. "No corporate bureaucracy, no misaligned priorities, just direct collaboration between people who understand each other's vision. This is how business should work." Pacific Ventures required one presentation to confirm their transition. James Walsh brought his entire marketing team to my temporary conference room, and I walked them through a comprehensive strategy that addressed every concern they had raised over the past 6 months. When James asked about implementation timelines, I was able to give him specifics that Marcus had never been able to provide. "We're in," James announced before I had finished answering questions. 24-month contract, $8.5 million total value with an option for renewal. Honestly, Alita, this feels like coming home. The domino effect at Thornton Marketing was swift and devastating. Patricia discovered the Henderson Industries departure when their accounting department called to discuss final billing procedures. Marcus learned about Aurora Tech through a panicked email from their previous account coordinator, asking why all communications had been redirected to my new company. Each departure created cascading chaos, as Richard realized he was losing not just clients, but the revenue projections that underpinned his entire business plan. Meridian Holdings requested an emergency meeting with Richard, ostensibly to discuss their quarterly campaign review. But when Marcus arrived for the presentation, Meridian's CEO informed him that they were terminating their relationship with Thornton Marketing, effective immediately. They had already signed with Sterling Solutions Marketing after a single phone conversation with me. The panic at Thornton Marketing was visible from across the city. Jenny kept me informed through carefully worded text messages describing increasingly frantic meetings between Richard and Patricia as they tried to calculate the financial impact of losing 4 major clients simultaneously. Marcus attempted to contact the departing clients directly, but discovered that none of them would return his calls or emails. The Quantum Industries situation became the final catastrophic blow. David Chen called Richard personally to inform him that Quantum Industries was withdrawing from all negotiations with Thornton Marketing. Their official statement cited concerns about organizational stability and leadership philosophy as primary factors in their decision. Within hours, David announced publicly that Quantum Industries had signed an exclusive consulting agreement with Sterling Solutions Marketing. The Pinnacle Marketing merger collapsed spectacularly. Without the major client contracts that had made Thornton Marketing an attractive acquisition target, Pinnacle's board voted to withdraw their offer. The termination letter was brutal in its directness, stating that Thornton Marketing no longer possessed the strategic assets and client relationships that had justified the original valuation. Tom Bradley submitted his resignation on a Friday afternoon, followed immediately by Jenny and 3 junior executives who had been offered positions at Sterling Solutions Marketing. The creative team requested transfers to my company, and within 2 weeks, nearly half of Thornton Marketing's staff had either left or expressed interest in leaving. Richard attempted to prevent the departures through legal threats, claiming that employee transitions represented theft of proprietary information and violation of non-compete agreements. But his attorneys quickly informed him that standard employment contracts allowed 30-day notice periods, and most employees had never signed enforceable non-compete clauses. Patricia's financial projections painted an apocalyptic picture. Without Henderson Industries, Aurora Tech, Pacific Ventures, Meridian Holdings, and Quantum Industries, Thornton Marketing faced a revenue drop of over 60%. Fixed costs remained the same, while income plummeted, creating an unsustainable cash flow crisis. The company's credit line was threatened, and layoffs became inevitable, but they were losing their most talented employees voluntarily. The investor board demanded an emergency meeting with Richard to understand how the company's most valuable assets had disappeared overnight. These weren't venture capitalists or corporate raiders. They were longtime business associates who had trusted Richard's leadership abilities and supported the company's growth trajectory. The meeting, according to Tom's intelligence, was brutal. Richard attempted to explain my departure as an unfortunate personnel issue, but the investors wanted to know why a single employee's termination had triggered the loss of over $50 million in active contracts. When Richard couldn't provide a satisfactory explanation, the investors began questioning his fundamental understanding of business development and client relationship management. But the most significant development came through a channel I hadn't expected. William Thornton, Richard's father and the company's founder, reached out to me directly through a mutual connection at the Chicago Business Association. William had built Thornton Marketing Solutions over 25 years, growing it from a 2-person operation into a respected mid-market agency. "I've been retired for 3 years, but I still monitor the company's performance," William said when he called. "What my son did to you is not just bad business. It's a betrayal of everything I tried to build this company to represent. I'd like to meet with you if you're willing to hear what I have to say." His tone carried genuine regret and what sounded like profound disappointment in his son's judgment. The founder of Thornton Marketing Solutions wanted to discuss my new venture personally, suggesting that this story was far from over. The industry recognition came faster than I had anticipated. Marketing executives throughout Chicago were discussing the dramatic client exodus from Thornton Marketing, and my name was consistently mentioned as the catalyst for change. Trade publications began reaching out for interviews about independent agency trends, and several industry associations invited me to speak at upcoming conferences. Richard's confident smile had vanished completely. The man who had humiliated me in front of my colleagues was now scrambling to explain to investors, clients, and industry peers how he had destroyed his own company in a single dramatic miscalculation. The reversal was so complete, so public, and so devastating that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. William Thornton chose Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse for our meeting, a downtown establishment that spoke to old-school business relationships and handshake agreements. At 68, he carried himself with the dignity of someone who had built something meaningful and lasting, his silver hair and tailored suit reflecting decades of successful client relationships. His weathered hands spoke to years of hard work, and his direct gaze suggested a man accustomed to honest conversations. "Alida, I need to start by apologizing for my son's behavior," William said after we had ordered. "I built Thornton Marketing on principles of loyalty, integrity, and respect for the people who make success possible. What Richard did to you represents everything I tried to teach him not to do." His disappointment was genuine and deep, extending beyond simple business disagreement into fundamental questions about character and leadership. William revealed that he had maintained personal relationships with many of the clients I had served, and they had been calling him directly to express their shock at my treatment and their satisfaction with my new company. "I've been watching your progress over the past 2 weeks," he continued, "and I'm impressed not just with your client acquisition, but with how you've handled this transition. You could have been vindictive or unprofessional, but you've maintained your dignity while building something remarkable." William's proposal was unexpected and generous. He offered to become a silent partner in Sterling Solutions Marketing, providing capital for rapid expansion and strategic guidance based on his decades of industry experience. More importantly, he wanted to introduce me to contacts in his personal network, established business leaders who valued the old-school approach to relationship building that had made him successful. "I'm not doing this to hurt Richard," William clarified. "I'm doing it because you represent the values that made this industry worth working in. If my son can't recognize talent and character when he sees it, then he doesn't deserve the legacy I tried to create for him." The media attention accelerated throughout the week. Chicago Business Journal published a feature story titled, "How One Executive's Firing Cost a Company $50 million, which became the most read article in the publication's recent history. The piece positioned my experience as a case study in the importance of employee retention and client relationship management. Marketing Land picked up the story nationally, sparking discussions about corporate culture and the hidden costs of poor leadership decisions. Richard found himself fielding calls from industry reporters, but his explanations only reinforced the narrative of incompetent management and strategic miscalculation. The ripple effects at Thornton Marketing continued expanding. Blackstone Corp., the company's oldest and most established client, requested a meeting with Richard to discuss their ongoing relationship. As a manufacturing company that valued stability and long-term partnerships, they were troubled by the public controversy surrounding my departure and the subsequent client exodus. The Blackstone meeting was a disaster. According to Tom's Intelligence Network, their CEO expressed serious concerns about Thornton Marketing's organizational stability and leadership philosophy. When Marcus attempted to present a comprehensive account management strategy, he made unrealistic promises about campaign performance and implementation timelines that any experienced marketer would recognize as impossible to deliver. Blackstone's CEO was not impressed. "We've been with this company for 8 years because we trusted the people who delivered consistent results," he told Richard directly. "If those people are gone, then we need to reconsider whether this partnership still makes sense." Within 48 hours, Blackstone announced they were conducting a comprehensive vendor review process, inviting proposals from multiple agencies, including Sterling Solutions Marketing. The implied message was clear: Richard's oldest and most loyal client was actively considering leaving him. Richard's attempts to contact me became increasingly desperate. His first voicemail was professionally polite, suggesting we might discuss mutually beneficial arrangements for client transition management. By the third message, he was offering me the VP position that should have been mine months earlier. The fifth voicemail included partnership stakes and equity sharing arrangements. I didn't return any of his calls. There was something deeply satisfying about letting him experience the same sense of powerlessness and uncertainty that he had inflicted on me. Every unreturned message was a reminder that actions have consequences, especially when those actions involve humiliating dedicated employees in front of their colleagues and clients. Jenny organized a coordinated resignation of 8 junior staff members, timing their departures to maximize operational disruption while maintaining professional standards. Her leadership during this transition impressed me enormously. She had learned to think strategically while maintaining the ethical standards that made her an effective account manager. Tom Bradley's departure eliminated Richard's connection to institutional knowledge that had sustained the company through previous challenges. Tom understood the technical aspects of campaign development, client communication protocols, and creative production processes that Richard had never bothered to learn. His absence left Richard dependent on external consultants for basic operational functions. The office became a ghost town. Entire departments dissolved as employees found positions with other agencies or joined Sterling Solutions Marketing. The creative team vanished completely, leaving Richard unable to deliver basic services to remaining clients. Conference rooms that had once buzzed with collaborative energy sat empty, filled only with abandoned equipment and disconnected phone lines. The investor ultimatum arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. The board gave Richard 30 days to recover the lost clients or face removal as CEO. They had lost confidence in his leadership capabilities and were actively discussing bringing in outside management consultants to assess the company's viability. Richard's final humiliation came through an industry publication. Marketing Executive Weekly published a feature story about client relationship management, using my situation as the primary example of how personal connections drive business success. The article quoted David Chen extensively praising my visionary approach and unmatched client dedication, while describing Thornton Marketing's termination decision as one of the most short-sighted business moves in recent memory. The story included a sidebar highlighting Quantum Industries' $20 million exclusive contract with Sterling Solutions Marketing, making the financial impact of Richard's decision impossible to ignore. Every marketing professional in Chicago would read about how Richard had personally destroyed his own company through a single catastrophic personnel decision. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came when Marcus Sterling contacted me directly. His LinkedIn message was humble and contrite, acknowledging his role in the conspiracy against me and expressing genuine remorse for his behavior. He had been unemployed for 6 weeks, unable to find another position after word spread about his involvement in my termination. "I know I don't deserve your consideration," Marcus wrote, "but I'd appreciate any advice you might have about rebuilding my career. I realize now that what we did to you was not just wrong, but incredibly stupid from a business perspective." His humility was surprising and genuine. Against my better judgment, I found myself considering whether redemption was possible for someone who had participated in betraying me. The question wasn't whether Marcus deserved a second chance, but whether Sterling Solutions Marketing was strong enough to transform former enemies into valuable contributors. Richard's empire was crumbling. His investors were furious, his clients were gone, and his reputation was permanently damaged. The man who had fired me for insubordination was now facing the complete collapse of everything he had inherited from his father. The reversal was so total, so public, and so devastating that it exceeded my most optimistic fantasies of professional vindication. But more importantly, it demonstrated that authentic relationships and genuine value creation ultimately triumph over corporate politics and manipulative leadership. Justice was being served one departed client at a time, 6 months after that humiliating boardroom confrontation. I stood in my corner office on the 20th floor of a downtown Chicago high-rise, watching the morning sun reflect off Lake Michigan. Sterling Solutions Marketing occupied an entire floor of professionally designed workspace, housing 15 talented employees who shared my commitment to innovative strategy and authentic client relationships. The contrast with my former cramped office at Thornton Marketing could not have been more dramatic. The numbers told an incredible story. We had successfully launched comprehensive campaigns for 12 major clients, generating over $40 million in annual contract value. Henderson Industries reported a 58% increase in customer engagement following our multi-platform campaign launch. Aurora-Tech's market share had doubled, with Maria Santos crediting our strategic partnership as the primary driver of their expansion success. My personal financial transformation was equally remarkable. Jake's tuition payments were no longer a source of stress. In fact, I had established a scholarship fund at Northwestern University for students from working-class families pursuing business degrees. My mother's medical expenses were fully covered, and her latest health reports showed significant improvement since stress-related factors had been eliminated from our family's financial picture. The industry recognition exceeded anything I had imagined possible during those dark days following my termination. The Chicago Marketing Association named me Entrepreneur of the Year, acknowledging not just my business success, but my role in highlighting the importance of employee treatment and ethical leadership practices. Harvard Business School invited me to participate in a case study about employee retention and client relationship management, which would be used to teach future business leaders about the hidden costs of poor personnel decisions. Speaking invitations arrived weekly from industry conferences, universities, and professional associations. My story had become a touchstone for discussions about workplace dignity, strategic leadership, and the true value of human capital in modern business development. The Harvard Business Review published my essay titled, "Why Client Relationships Belong to People, Not Companies," which generated over 50,000 shares and sparked conversations throughout the business community. Richard's downfall was complete and public. Thornton Marketing Solutions declared bankruptcy after losing their remaining clients to competitors who offered more stable leadership and proven track records. The company that William Thornton had spent 25 years building was liquidated to cover accumulated debts, with assets sold at auction to the highest bidders. Richard himself had become a cautionary tale throughout Chicago's marketing community. After failing to find executive positions with established agencies, he eventually accepted a middle management role with a small suburban firm that specialized in local restaurant promotion. His salary was less than what he had paid me as senior account executive, and his career prospects remained permanently damaged by the public nature of his strategic failures. The Thornton family name, once synonymous with innovative marketing and client loyalty, became associated with poor judgment and destructive leadership practices. Industry veterans would reference pulling a Thornton when discussing particularly short-sighted personnel decisions, ensuring that Richard's mistakes would be remembered long after his company disappeared. Marcus Sterling's redemption story provided one of the most unexpected developments of my entire journey. After 6 months of unemployment and genuine reflection on his role in my betrayal, Marcus reached out with a proposal that surprised everyone, including myself. He had spent his time away from the industry, volunteering with small business development programs, helping entrepreneurs create marketing strategies without expecting compensation. His letter of application to Sterling Solutions Marketing was unlike anything I had ever received from a job candidate. Instead of highlighting his achievements and qualifications, Marcus focused on the mistakes he had made, the lessons he had learned, and his commitment to rebuilding his career based on integrity rather than ambition. "I participated in destroying something beautiful because I was jealous of your success and angry about my own limitations," he wrote. "I can't undo what I did, but I can spend the rest of my career trying to build something better. If you're willing to give me that chance, I promise you'll never question my loyalty again." The decision to hire Marcus was difficult and controversial. Jenny and Tom both expressed concerns about trusting someone who had actively worked to undermine me. But something in his application letter convinced me that genuine transformation was possible, and that Sterling Solutions Marketing was strong enough to absorb former adversaries who had truly learned from their mistakes. Marcus joined our team as a junior account coordinator, accepting a salary significantly lower than his previous position, and working under direct supervision from Jenny, who had been promoted to senior account manager. His humility was consistent and genuine, and his work ethic impressed even our most skeptical team members. William Thornton's partnership proved transformative for Sterling Solutions Marketing. His investment capital allowed us to expand into new markets and acquire sophisticated technology platforms that enhanced our service delivery capabilities. More importantly, his introductions to established business leaders generated opportunities that would have taken years to develop independently. William's presence also provided a connection to the industry's foundational principles that younger professionals might not fully understand. His stories about building relationships through personal attention and consistent delivery reminded our entire team that success in marketing ultimately depends on human connections, rather than technological innovations or creative gimmicks. The personal growth aspects of my journey proved as valuable as the professional achievements. The betrayal I experienced at Thornton Marketing forced me to recognize my own worth and take control of my career destiny. I learned that authentic relationships cannot be transferred through corporate restructuring or stolen by ambitious colleagues because they are built on trust, competence, and genuine care for other people's success. My leadership style at Sterling Solutions Marketing reflected these insights. Instead of hoarding information or maintaining artificial hierarchies, I implemented transparent communication policies and created employee ownership programs that aligned individual success with company growth. Team members knew they were valued for their contributions rather than their willingness to conform to corporate politics. The broader industry impact of my story continued expanding throughout the year. Several major agencies revised their employee termination policies, implementing review processes that prevented single executives from making dramatic personnel decisions without board oversight. Client relationship management became a more prominent topic in business school curricula, with my experience used as an example of how companies often undervalue their most important assets. Jenny Rodriguez emerged as one of our most effective senior managers, demonstrating natural leadership abilities that had been suppressed under Thornton Marketing's hierarchical structure. Tom Bradley became our creative director, bringing institutional knowledge and strategic wisdom that elevated our entire team's capabilities. Both of them credited their experience witnessing my termination with teaching them to recognize and resist toxic workplace dynamics. The life lesson that emerged from this entire experience was both simple and profound. Authentic success cannot be built on betrayal, manipulation, or the humiliation of others. Richard's attempt to eliminate me as a threat to his authority ultimately destroyed everything he was trying to protect, because he failed to understand that business relationships are fundamentally human relationships that require trust, respect, and genuine value creation. Standing in my office that morning, reviewing the contracts and partnership agreements that represented our growing success, I reflected on how being fired in that boardroom had become the catalyst for discovering my true potential. The humiliation that seemed devastating at the time was actually liberation from a corporate structure that limited my ability to serve clients effectively and build meaningful professional relationships. Richard's betrayal taught me to value my own worth and take responsibility for my career trajectory rather than depending on other people's recognition or approval. His attempt to steal credit for my work ultimately forced me to create something better than anything I could have achieved while constrained by his company's political dynamics and hierarchical limitations. The most important lesson was understanding that true power in business comes not from position or title, but from the relationships you build and the value you create for others. Richard had the authority to fire me, but he couldn't transfer the trust and respect I had earned through years of dedicated service and proven results. My success at Sterling Solutions Marketing wasn't revenge against Richard or validation of my professional abilities. It was proof that ethical leadership and authentic relationship building ultimately triumph over manipulation and corporate politics. The clients who followed me didn't do so because they wanted to hurt Thornton Marketing, but because they valued the service and expertise I provided. As I prepared for another day of client meetings and strategic planning sessions, I felt grateful for every aspect of my journey, including the betrayal and humiliation that had seemed so devastating 6 months earlier. Richard had unknowingly given me the greatest gift possible, the opportunity to build something meaningful based on my own values and vision. The woman who had been escorted from that boardroom in shame had discovered she was capable of creating something far better than anything she could have achieved while accepting other people's limitations and compromises. The humiliation was temporary, but the lessons and opportunities that emerged from it would last a lifetime. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment when what seemed like the worst thing that could happen actually opened doors to something better than you had imagined? How did you find the courage to rebuild after someone tried to destroy your confidence or career? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone else who's facing their own boardroom humiliation. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like to help others find it. Subscribe to hear more stories about turning professional setbacks into personal triumphs, and share this video with anyone who might need a reminder that authentic relationships and genuine value creation always win in the end. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the people who try to tear you down are actually building the foundation for your greatest success. Your worth isn't determined by other people's recognition, but by the value you create and the integrity you maintain even when nobody's watching.